with Mass Effect 5, there's been a lot of talk about if they're going to canonize an ending and how they're going to move on. I'm one who believes that everything they've shown us so far is hinting pretty heavily to that we are very likely seeing Destroy be the canon ending moving on. And, so I want to talk about that. And I want to talk about how one of the big contradictions in the teasers to that idea is that we've seen a Geth, and why I think that could be and how I think that could happen. For the basis of this, the whole reason I believe that Destroy is what they've done they're going to move on with a canonized ending is partially just my gut. So I'll be straight up. It also just, to me, it just seems logical that that would be the way that you move on. If you think about if the Destroy ending is canon, it's relatively easy to move on with the story. If Synthesis is the ending, you have to deal with the fact that like everyone's half synthetic now, or that there's been this weird hybridization of everyone to be like half synthetic and half organic, and or what that means, and it, to me at least, distracts from moving on, because you're almost forced to remain on a lot of the issues of the original trilogy. Now, Control ending is similar for me, that you have the situation where Shepard has become like the overseer of the Reapers, and like, yeah, maybe Shepard, maybe keeps the Reapers around to be friendly and help, or maybe they take them into deep space and they disappear, but there's always going to be that like specter, no pun intended, of the Reapers like hanging out there. And I feel like it's really important for various reasons to just move on, from the Reapers. They really can't rehash them as an enemy. I hope whatever antagonist they make in the next game is something completely different than the Reapers, because we've done that. So Destroy makes sense to me, but it also brings up some problems, because part of the Destroy ending, at least in the way that they did it in the trilogy, is that if you use the Destroy ending, you kill all the Reapers. They're all dead. But that also means that all of the other synthetics are dead, including our AI companion, the Reaper influenced code, and Edie, who's in our ship. You also, lose an entire species from the game, being the Geth. Now, there's debates to be had about whether the Geth are like a whole species, or whether they're really just one individual AI that lives in a bunch of bodies, and and when they get into that in Mass Effect 3 especially. We're not doing that in this video, but they're gone, right? So if my theory is true, and one of my theories about Destroy being the canon is the picture I have on screen right now of in that trailer way back in 2020, we had Liara walking up what looked like a mountain at first, but then you come to realize she's walking up a dead Reaper, and then it looks like there's another dead Reaper in the background being silhouetted by the sun. Honestly, that's the basis of my my whole theory here, that it's Destroy. But I think it's fair because in all the teasers we've seen otherwise, we've seen no evidence that, one, their synthesis has happened, and two, that there's still Reapers around, which would be possible in Control. So that's the basis I'm on. If you don't agree with it, all good, but that's where we're moving from here. So what we move on to from there is, okay, fine. The Reapers are dead. They're all gone, but that means the Geth are gone. And back in 2023, we had an issue, or we had something come up that makes that theory harder. And we had this poster come out in 2023 on N7 Day. It's the agent from the little, 20-second trailer that we got, 30 seconds, who holds up the gun, looks real cool, is walking out to a docking bay or something. But obviously the big thing about this was that people zoomed in to this bar scene that's being presented in the middle, and one of the things we see, if we zoom in enough, is this image. And here there's various things to talk about here, but one of them being that there appears to be an Asari sitting here at this kind of executive table, this booth, talking to what is pretty much certainly an Angara, which kind of makes no sense, because we have what appears to be a Geth in some very regal clothing, or outfit of some capacity here. And the reason that's interesting is because at least as far as we know at this point, there's never been an instance where an Angaran and a Geth should have ever been in the same space. And even in Mass Effect Andromeda, we're not under the impression that we know of, and obviously this could be, challenged, or they could pretty easily say that some Geth snuck onto one of the arcs. But as far as we know, Angarans and Geth have never existed in the same galaxy at the same time. And that makes this interesting. So that implies that the Geth can exist in a post-Reaper War galaxy. So if the destroy ending is canon, how do we deal with that? I have a few ideas. I will say this was like, I had this idea for the video before, but I saw a thread on Reddit, on the Mass Effect subreddit, that was asking this indirectly. And one of the responses like kind of motivated me to finally make this video. And this is slightly inspired by them, but not entirely. So I have a few ideas of how the Geth could come back, assuming the destroy ending is canon and that at the time, they were all destroyed. The first theory I have is that we could have kind of like a coalesce array situation going on. So I believe it's more explained in the comics and things like that. But the coalesce array is this idea. It's a massive deep space telescope in the Perseus Veil that's created by the Geth heretics, the ones that sided with the Reapers. That's using 3 inactive mass relays in Reaper tech to basically be a telescope. Now, from the wiki page and from the things I've read myself, it's implied that some of the data from this was discovered by, I believe, Quarians, and some of the data from this was actually used to help get the Andromeda arcs to Andromeda. But this isn't exactly like, I don't think that this is why the Reapers or why the Geth could come back, but I assume the Geth are a consensus. They're a very intelligent species. They very likely were planning ahead. And even as soon as they knew there was a possibility that they could be destroyed, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they could have little bases out in deep space that are outside the reach of what happened in the destroy ending, where they all got wiped out. And all it takes is essentially one copy of the consensus to exist for the Geth to return. It's worth considering too, the Geth don't have to come back in the bodies we know them as, right? There's this, there should be a thought too that the Geth could come back in any mechanical form, because the Geth weren't the bodies, that we saw in the trilogy and that we fought in many cases. That was just their container. The Geth, and this depends on the endings you get and how you interpret the stuff yourself, are one consensus, one being that lives in bodies, but not permanently. Once the Geth gets wiped out, that node is just gone. But that's not, the whole thing going down. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if they decide to bring back the Geth in a Mass Effect 5 where the destroy ending is canon to 3. They could pretty easily just hand wave it and be like, yeah, one of their little ships was out in deep space. They hid them out there. It was like a backup. They just made sure. And now we're bringing them back in. And whether it's in the same type of bodies that they had that we saw in the trilogy, or maybe in entirely new ones, because honestly, I would even argue that this doesn't look like a normal Geth. We've got the real high shoulders. Like, obviously everyone pays attention to the shiny, the kind of, very 2000s, shape of the shine here. This body could look like anything. They could make them, they could put them into anything they want. So that's worth considering. So I think that's a pretty simple way to explain that. Another one is to consider that the Quarians could just make them again. There's nothing saying that the Quarians can't, just make the Geth again, especially if they've, taken over Rannoch again, if they've recovered their homeworld and all of the resources, and in theory, the factories and all that were likely making, Geth this whole time. They could just do that again. One thing to consider as well, if, and this is a big if, they make peace between the Geth and Quarians canon from Mass Effect 3, Well, the Geth gave all the Quarians a huge upgrade in their suits and all that, to make them adjust to Rannoch more quickly, be able to stop wearing their suits quicker, and all that. Well, that code that they would have used to do that, there's a decent chance that you'd be able to recover a ton of what is the Geth from those very upgrades that are in every single Quarian, or at least in their suits and their infrastructure, right? There's also all of the infrastructure on Rannoch, and any other planets the Geth inhabited that would almost certainly have some kind of remnants, at least, of code and stuff like that from the Geth. So it's very possible that they could just, be, recovered, that way as well. I think that it wouldn't even surprise me if we have a situation where the Geth are, just backed up on a hard drive on Rannoch somewhere, like way deep underground, that got shielded from the blast from the destroy ending, and they can just kind of bring them back that way. The last possibility is that the Star Child was just wrong, or was being dishonest with Shepard at the end. And I even get that feeling every time I finish the game, that when you're interacting with the Star Child, I've always kind of felt like, this thing would, why wouldn't it just lie to me to try to dissuade me from doing the things that will make it go away, right? Or, what it is comprised of. And it just kind of makes me feel like there's a pretty good chance, and I think a lot of the community would be okay with it, if they just explained it by being like, yeah, Shepard told us, or we found out that Shepard was told by, by the Reapers, that if, they use the destroy ending, if they use the destroy function of the catalyst, well, it was going to destroy all the, all the good ones too. And that's not what happened. And they just move on, right? Like, maybe that's not the most satisfying. Maybe that's not the most interesting thing. But I do think there's a possibility of that. Now, one thing I do think is worth mentioning is this poster. I believe this is from like 2021, where you have this, I mean, the Geth are going to be involved in the next game, right? And I think ever since we got this poster, that's been pretty much guaranteed. This poster very obviously is, showing off a Geth. I actually have this poster on my wall over here. And, we have the four, individuals who are inside this ship. The ship is very Mass Effect 1 looking, especially in color scheme. Literally, the name on it is SFX, which was the original code name for Mass Effect. And you have just this clear reference to the Geth and in the shape of this crater, with that being its eyeball. You even have the little light lines coming off of it. And if you look in close, and you can see one example right dead in the middle, there is at least one dead Geth kind of half buried in the dirt. And then you can kind of debate around the crater. There's people who think there's dead Quarians, more dead Geth, and so on. But ever since we got this, I think it's been assumed we would see the Geth again in the next game. And my whole thing is, I think there's a good chance the next game, one of the major plot points of the game could be us having some existential threat that we need to help to destroy, or to help fight off. And we realize, like, oh man, we could really use the Geth, but we killed them all at the end of Mass Effect 3. How can we get them back? And then all these possibilities I've talked about maybe all come into play as we go down this list of ways to try to get the Geth back, because we need them to help us fight off whoever this bad guy is, or whatever we're dealing with in the third game. Look, I don't have all the answers. I have my own biases here and things like that. Maybe I'm wrong about Destroy. Maybe they don't pick a canon ending. Maybe they do something completely different. Maybe these teases, everything we've seen for the last 5 years, literally means nothing, and it's all been teased. Even though I'm pretty sure in 2025, Mike Gamble did say that everything we've seen so far, it does matter. So, take that for what it is. I just think it's fun to explore. I think it's fun to talk about. It's fun to think about. And while I wait for them to make some news, or to announce things, for me to make more analytical videos about, I want to try to do things like this and at least start a conversation. So let me know what you think about this, how they could bring the Geth back, if the Destroy ending is canon, or if you think the Destroy ending is canon. We can get into all those conversations as well. Just be nice. If you like Mass Effect, you want more of these kind of videos, more conversation, more speculation, more news coverage, subscribe to the channel. Please hit the like button so more people see the video. Consider becoming a YouTube member if you want videos like this one a bit early, and some other perks. Check out all of the other things I'm doing links in the description of the video. There's also places in there to support what I'm doing, buying merch and so on. That is all I have for this one. So until next time.